In 1963, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., one of the greatest speeches of our time was delivered as a man shared with the nation his dream. The purpose of this speech was to move a nation from a state of racial inequality to one that focuses on unity. Although racial inequality has advanced to some degree, from this day it is still a pressing issue that affects all of us in some way or another today. Let us visit the details of this great speech and the presenter of it, Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., born Michael King Jr., was one of the greatest civil rights leaders of all times, serving that office from December 1955 to the day of his death, April 4, 1964. Michael King was born on January 15, 1929, the second child of Reverend Michael King Sr. and Alberta Williams King. Dr. King was educated at Morehouse College, earning a bachelor's degree in 1948. He attended liberal Kosher Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. He thrived in all of his studies and was valedictorian of his class in 1951. He was elected student body president, and he earned a doctorate degree from Boston University in 1955. On June 18, 1953, he married Coretta Scott, and together they became parents of 4 children: Yolanda, Martin Luther King Jr., Dexter King, and Bernice King. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech in 1963 and won a Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. And in that same year, April 4th, he was standing on the balcony of a motel in Memphis, Tennessee, and was assassinated. Now that we've learned a few things about his life, we will now turn our attention to this powerful I Have a Dream speech, and as we spotlight 5 examples of the uses of rhetorical devices of repetition. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by manacles of separation and chains of discrimination. 2. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of prosperity. 3. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial inequality to the solid rock of brotherhood. 4. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. 5. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Now that we have examined the use of repetition in this iconic presentation, we will conclude by saying that repetition is just one from the rhetorical devices used by this great orator during his I Have a Dream speech. Dr. Martin Luther King used many other devices also, such as metaphors, synonyms, and comparisons, which earned his speech the honor of being called by many one of the greatest speeches of all times. This was referenced from I Have a Dream speech, Vimeo.com, True Story Bio, and the King Center, 1960.